Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Bola Tinubu sworn in as Nigeria's president. There's still fierce discontent from those who question the transparency of the election that got him into office, and he takes over a battered economy, rampant security challenges, and a disenchanted nation. Also, deplorable, draconian, abhorrent. There's international outcry condemning an anti-gay law in Uganda that's been signed into law. There are warnings the move could jeopardize aid and investment. And breached but not abandoned. A fragile, much violated truce in Sudan is extended for 5 days. The regional fallout from the conflict is examined at a key regional banking meeting in Egypt. But first, Nigeria has a new president. Bola Tinubu, a former governor of Lagos, was sworn in on Monday in Abuja. Now, he's taking over from Muhammadu Buhari, whose 2 terms in power left the continent's top GDP hobbled by insecurity, record unemployment, and a wheezing economy. Many Nigerians are still angry over Tinubu's win, accusing him of a career of corruption and of having fraudulently swung February's vote. The Electoral Commission's dismissed this, but the runners-up in the polls are still legally contesting the results. Tinubu said that he wants to work collaboratively, even with his critics.
We are here to further mend and heal this nation, not tear and injure it.
Bola Tinubu described his becoming the president of Nigeria as the proudest day of his life. But he has a difficult road ahead, and this is nothing to be proud about. His 2 main opponents have taken him to court, saying the election that brought him to power was rigged. They say it is a matter of time before the court declared his election as invalid. Some Nigerians say they do not recognize him as president since his election victory is being challenged in court. Even if the court declared him duly elected, the president will still have more than enough things to worry about. His predecessor, Muhammadu Buhari, has left huge debts behind. The country is now spending more than 80% of its revenue to service debts. The implication is that President Tinubu will be left with very little funds to run a country of more than 200 million people. This comes at a time Nigeria needs a lot of money to revamp its dwindling economy. The president takes over at a time Nigeria faces serious security challenges from jihadist and armed groups called bandits. Even his supporters admit that the president has a huge task ahead. But many Nigerians are questioning whether he has the stamina to address Nigeria's problems. His frequent trips abroad for medical treatment is a source of concern for many.
Well, our Sam Olukoya there for us. Now, the new head of state has, as Sam pointed out, a lot on his plate. Between the double-digit inflation, plummeting currency, and a profound, multifaceted security crisis, Nigerians are tired and ready for better. Our correspondents report on where people in Lagos are hoping to be steered as Bola Tinubu takes up the reins of power.
The swearing-in of Bola Tinubu is a glorious day for Tajuddin Salia. The man in charge of security at this bus station campaigned for the former Lagos governor. Tajuddin is convinced after 8 years of Muhammadu Buhari as president, the experience and wisdom of the new head of state will boost Nigeria.
Our hope is that he will be able to make Nigeria greater in the same way he did with Lagos, and to do even better. I have faith that God will help him to fix the insecurity so everyone can get on with their lives.
This hope is far from being shared by tens of millions of Nigerians. Okunsanya voted without conviction during the presidential elections. This woman in her 30s deplores the high cost of living. She is frustrated by an unfair system riddled with corruption and is not convinced that President Bola Tinubu will change things for good.
A lot of youth has traveled out of the country and we all know what is going on. So I think as the incoming leader, he should sit down, think about it. What can I do to make this a better place, and what can I do because people don't believe in them anymore?
According to this economist from the University of Lagos, making young people want to stay in Nigeria will be one of the many challenges the new president has to tackle. For him, Bola Tinubu and his team will have to finance essential reforms. However, almost 1/5 of the country's oil production is unaccounted for every day, and this shortfall is not at all made up by tax revenue.
The coming administration, my concern is this. I think they've made too much promises, and therefore they are constrained financially. And currently now, our debt profile is extremely huge, and the debt servicing is going to take so much of the available revenue. The people as well are not that empowered economically to be able to pay higher taxes.
Africa's leading economy is at yet another turning point, and to revive Nigeria, President Bola Tinubu will first have to reconcile a divided and disenchanted nation.
Well, for more on Bola Tinubu's prospects, I'm joined by geopolitical analyst Professor Emmanuel Iga. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
So, Tinubu, he has a lot on his plate. There's hopes that he's going to make young people stay in the country, restore faith, promote unity. How can he do all that, bearing in mind just quite how divisive just his election has been?
Yes, that's a very tough challenge for him. I think we need to kind of recall right now, before we go further, just as we're saying, that his election remains challenged in the court. The Chief Justice that swore him in this afternoon is the same, the president of the Supreme Court that is going to have to trash out his the election petitions that have been leveled against him. So and his party. So by end of August, because there is a timeline that has to be respected, maximum 180 days. It will be running till the end of August. It will be then that we know if he's confirmed definitively and will continue as president. So that's the first hurdle he has to cross. I don't really see the Supreme Court actually reversing his election, because that has never happened in Nigeria before. But we never can tell. Maybe miracles can happen. We don't know. But for now, well, he's on course. He's now on track as Nigeria's president. And as you said, the challenges are a multitude. In fact, the question is, where does he start from? So I think the first challenge he will have to tackle is how to bring back the Nigerians together as, a functioning population, people coming together in a reunified entity that they can identify with. Because we've had years of reckless politics that have kind of torn the nation apart, and that has been worsened by the elections that just took place in February. The election was very, very violent in some areas, and has left a good part of the Nigerians feeling disenfranchised, and probably many of them considering that the victory of Bola Tinubu was a stolen victory. So it is this section of our population that he should be looking at now.
It's quite a substantial section of the population.
It's a substantial section. So how is he going to work to bring them back into the fold, give them a sense of belonging? And that's practically coming from day one, as from tomorrow, with some very serious structural announcements, And
another thing, actually, that's going against him in a way is, there are some very kind of clear similarities between him and Buhari, who oversaw a pretty unsuccessful 2 terms. What is it about Tinubu that he brings that is different to what Buhari brought, that anyone looking for the possibility of a new dawn for the country can grasp onto, thinking this might be kind of a new element in the mix?
Well, definitely. They are 2 different people. They are President Buhari, outgone, and newly sworn in President Bola Tinubu. They are 2 different personalities. Tinubu is a very, very shrewd politician. He's an astute businessman. He has proved his managerial capacities at various levels. He has strings of companies. And so we know this person really knows what making an economy work is all about. It's not exactly the profile of outgone President Buhari. In fact, as of the time he came to power in 2015, we knew him more with his ex-military, ex-general profile. So they are two different people. Bola Tinubu is also a man who probably knows how to identify people that are competent and bring them around himself, appoint them to high positions, and make them work really under his authority.
So you think there'd be a more effective governance under Tinubu? He chooses better people.
We do expect that. We had a situation at some point in time with President Buhari that people were asking themselves if the President Buhari was actually in charge at Asorok, which is the presidential palace. Even his wife had to come out and denounce the influence of what she called a cabal of people around the president and who were not making it possible for Buhari to really express himself as the commander-in-chief and head of state, president of the nation. So we are not going to see that kind of thing happening with Bola Tinubu. He will be really a man that will be in charge and control his government, and that's what we expect will help him to actually put the right policies in place with his collaborators and move Nigeria forward on the economic front, the security front, unemployment, what was reported from Lagos, this oil theft, oil bunkering. Nigeria is losing 25% of its oil production every day and has lost its position as the first oil producer and exporter to Angola, in Africa. So there are quite a number of things that he will have to do, and I just hope he will be able to do that, a good number of them, in his first 100 days in office.
Thank you so much for your insight into the prospects of new Nigerian President Bola Tinubu, who was inaugurated on Monday. Now, in a look at other news, the international condemnation of Uganda's new anti-gay bill have come thick and fast. Whilst many have slammed it as a repressive and appalling violation of human rights, the legislation is popular in Uganda. Our Clement de Roma tells us more.
Despite facing pressure from the West, especially from the US, which has threatened to spend $400 million in funding to battle HIV and AIDS, on Monday, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni enacted a new homophobic law. The move comes as no surprise to most of the country's lawmakers, as the legislation has been popular nationally since the first vote in Parliament 2 months ago. The only step back was at the president's request. MPs agreed to remove a provision that criminalized the mere declaration of being LGBT+. However, the other extreme punishments remained, such as the death penalty for what the law deems to be aggravated homosexual acts, and a 20-year sentence for the promotion of homosexuality. This provision could impact the work of a human rights organization. They can, of course, still challenge the law in the Constitutional Court. It overturned a similar law back in 2014. Some LGBTQ+ campaigners and local opponents of the law are already maintaining a low profile for fear they could now face arrest if they're accused of promoting homosexuality.
A fragile truce in Sudan's been extended for another 5 days. US and Saudi mediators had earlier called out both sides in the country's conflict for violating the previously hard-won ceasefire between warring generals. Fighting that began in mid-April has regional repercussions. Those risks were being weighed up in Egypt as the major partners of the African Development Bank met for a major meeting. Our correspondent was there and sent us this report.
A raft of deals were signed at the African Development Bank's recent meeting in Egypt, but overshadowing the agreements was discord in Sudan. War between two generals that has devastated progress.
Sudan, of course, as you know, is mainly depending on agriculture, and now this issue of food security, we have good opportunities. We have started a very ambitious program, and we started planning for the development, but this war, of course, affects adversely all these efforts.
Development organizations know all too well how conflict upends systems that support growth.
Development cannot happen in the context of conflict. It disrupts operations, it displaces populations, and most importantly, it leads to the loss of hardly earned economic progress gains.
The fighting also threatens regional stability, and not just in terms of security. It could affect the future negotiations over the Grand Renaissance Dam that sparked a decade of disagreement with Khartoum over the control of the waters of the Nile.
Any conflict impact in Sudan is going to impact the whole region. It's going to impact the Red Sea. Therefore, that's why stability of Sudan is a global public good. So we will continue to support our Sudanese brothers to navigate the peaceful mechanism of coexistence.
While the UN alerts of the risk of conflict spreading regionally, more than 350,000 Sudanese have fled to neighbouring countries.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Till then, take care.